7:31-37. Then he returned from the region of Tyre, and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis. And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears, and after spitting touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. And Jesus charged them to tell no one. But the more he charged them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, He has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. The first thing that demands our notice in these verses is the mighty miracle that is here recorded. We read that they brought unto the Lord one that was deaf and had an impediment in his speech, and besought him that he would put his hand upon him. At once the petition is granted, and the cure is wrought. Speech and hearing are instantaneously given to the man by a word and a touch. Immediately his ears were opened, and his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plain. We see but half the instruction of this passage if we only regard it as an example of our Lord's divine power. It is such an example beyond a doubt, but it is something more than that. We must look further, deeper, and lower than the surface, and we shall find in the passage precious spiritual truths. Here we are meant to see our Lord's power to heal the spiritually deaf. He can give the chief of sinners a hearing ear. He can make him delight in listening to the very gospel which he once ridiculed and despised. Here also we are meant to see our Lord's power to heal the spiritually dumb. He can teach the hardest of transgressors to call upon God. He can put a new song in the mouth of him whose talk was once only of this world. He can make the vilest of men speak of spiritual things, and testify the gospel of the grace of God. When Jesus pours forth his Spirit, nothing is impossible. We must never despair of others. We must never regard our own hearts as too bad to be changed. He that healed the deaf and the dumb still lives. The cases which society pronounces hopeless are not incurable if they are brought to Christ. The second thing which demands our notice in these verses is the peculiar manner in which our Lord thought good to work the miracle here recorded. We are told that when the deaf and the dumb person was brought to Jesus, he took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers into his ears and spit and touched his tongue, and looking up to heaven, he sighed, and then, and not until then, came the words of commanding power, Ephrata, that is, be opened. There is undoubtedly much that is mysterious in these actions. We know not why they were used. It would have been as easy to our Lord to speak the word and command health to return at once, as to do what he here did. His reasons for the course he adopted are not recorded. We only know that the result was the same as on other occasions. The man was cured. But there is one simple lesson to be learned from our Lord's conduct on this occasion. That lesson is that Christ was not tied to the use of any one means in doing his works among men. Sometimes he thought fit to work in one way, sometimes in another. His enemies were never able to say that unless he employed certain invariable agency, he could not work at all. We see the same thing going on still in the Church of Christ. We see continual proof that the Lord is not tied to the use of any one means exclusively in conveying grace to the soul. Sometimes he is pleased to work by the word preached publicly, sometimes by the word read privately. Sometimes he awakens people by sickness and affliction, sometimes by the rebukes or counsel of friends. Sometimes he employs means of grace to turn people out of the way of sin. Sometimes he arrests their attention by some providence without any means of grace at all. He will not have any means of grace made an idol and exalted to the disparagement of other means. He will not have any means despised as useless and neglected as of no value. All are good and valuable. All are in their turn employed for the same great end, the conversion of souls. All are in the hands of him who gives not account of his matters, and knows best which to use in each separate case that he heals. The last thing which demands our notice in these verses is the remarkable testimony which was borne by those who saw the miracle here recorded. They said of our Lord, "He has done all things well." It is more than probable that those who said these words were little sensible of their full meaning when applied to Christ. Like Caiaphas, they spoke not of themselves, John 11:51. But the truth to which they gave utterance is full of deep and unspeakable comfort, and ought to be daily remembered by all true Christians. Let us remember it as we look back over the days past of our lives, from the hour of our conversion. Our Lord has done all things well. In the first, bringing us out of darkness into marvelous light, in humbling us and teaching us our weakness, guilt, and folly, in stripping us of our idols and choosing all our portions, in placing us where we are, and giving us what we have. How well everything has been done! How great the mercy that we have not had our own way! Let us remember it as we look forward to the days yet to come. We know not what they may be, bright or dark, many or few, but we know that we are in the hands of Him who does all things well. He will not err in any of his dealings with us. He will take away and give. He will afflict and bereave. He will move and he will settle with perfect wisdom at the right time, in the right way. The great shepherd of the sheep makes no mistakes. He leads every lamb of his flock by the right way to the city of habitation. We shall never see the full beauty of these words until the resurrection morning. We shall then look back over our lives and know the meaning of everything that happened from first to last. We shall remember all the way by which we were led and confess that all was well done. The why and the wherefore, the causes and the reasons of everything which now perplexes, will be clear and plain as the sun at noonday. We shall wonder at our own past blindness and marvel that we could ever have doubted our Lord's love. Now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now we know in part, but then shall we know even as we are known. 1 Corinthians 13:12.